probably need to put Marley in here.
You probably need to put Marley in here. By the way, we're recording.
No, oh.
Oh, and it's 4 o'clock.
Hold on. Marley, come here. Let's start 15 seconds late. Come on. Go. Go.
Alright, you ready to rock?
Let's do this, baby.
Check, check. 1, 2. Check. Hello. Is anyone out there?
They can hear you.
They can hear me? Can you guys hear me okay? Can you hear me? Okay.
If I yell, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear Liz? Give us a thumbs up. I can't see any of this, so it works out.
Okay, Zach said he can hear me, so that's good enough.
Woohoo! All right. This is DiceFest 2020. What did you say?
It's a texture.
Oh boy, we've got our act together, which is important. We had to go get the dog. Like, there was all kinds of stuff going on behind the scenes. All right, we are recording this, so if you can't make it for the whole thing, or you couldn't make it at all, or whatever, it is being recorded and it will be played back. This is DiceFest. This is a free tutorial from Flying Frog Productions. My name is Aaron Lovejoy, and I'm a banana. You probably wouldn't understand that unless you paid attention for the last week and a half. Anyways, it's October, Halloween, you know, stuff like that. And I don't know, whatever. Anyways, that being said, the boys over at Flying Frog asked me to impart some tips and tricks to all of you. We've got all the cool new sculpts out. All the remastered stuff is super awesome. And I'm going to show you how to do a couple things. So in this first one, we are doing tutorials. We're not doing tutorials. Well, we are doing tutorials, but we're doing two textures. Textures. And mainly we're going to do a couple different things. We're going to do a couple different ways to do your leather. And I'm going to show you fast ways to do it so that, I mean, I know not all of you are, going for like super uber, detailed paint jobs and stuff. You just want to get your models on the gaming table, make them look good, do it fast, and that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to do some textures on leathers, a couple different kinds, and then we're also going to make some ripped up pants on the Hungry Dead. So rock and roll, right? We ready to do this? Marley, are we ready to do this? Marley's my dog. She's so cute. Hopefully she doesn't go crazy and start barking.
Yes.
But it is what it is. So, all right. What are we going to start with? Let us switch cameras here. And
Look at that puddle pad.
yeah, look at this beautiful puddle pad. So first pro tip, get yourself a puddle pad and paint on it. It's awesome. You spill paint, you put your airbrush stuff down, whatever. It soaks it all up. It's very nice. Works great. So I'm going to grab a model. We're going to start with the US Marshal. He's a very cool model. This is the remastered sculpt. He looks super awesome. And we're just going to put a leather, sort of a worn leather jacket on him. I'm going to be using a few paints here. I'm going to be using the Shadows of Brimstone War Paint sets. We got leather brown. I need some black. Maybe a little bit of this crimson hand red. I'm sure two people's brains just popped because I'm grabbing a lot of colors. But desert yellow, and maybe I'll use this. I don't think I'll use Fang bone. So maybe just these colors. That looks good, right? Okay, so the first thing I need a really dark leather color. I need a mid-tone leather color. So my mid-tone leather color is going to be the leather brown. That's going to be the middle of the road color. I'm going to make a darker color with these colors right here. So mix those up. Let me put a little of this on my wet palette. So I'm gonna make 2 little drops of this. I need some black. And I need some of this crimson color. Crimson Hand Red. And the red is basically just to give me a more reddish, oh, that wasn't mixed up very well, was it? The red is just there to give me a more reddish brown in my shadows. So I got that. I'm going to mix this all up. Sometimes if it separates a little bit in the can, you definitely want to mix all that binder and stuff back together. Make sure the black is good. I'll actually put a little bit more black on there. There we go. Alright. So basically what I want to do, I want to make a darker black, or a darker brown and a lighter brown right there. Let me move my camera up a little bit. And I'm going to grab that, grab a little bit of black. Let me switch cameras here for you so that you can see what I'm mixing. So I'm just making a darker black. Like that. Or not black, darker brown, sorry. Okay, so I've got a darker brown, I've got a lighter brown. Those are my two colors. So I always start, when I'm base coating a model, I start with the midtone and the shadow. And what we're going to do is start applying that to our model here. Oops, on camera. Move this forward. Okay, so I want to paint his jacket basically a darker brown. And if you saw my priming video that I posted on priming your Brimstone miniatures, this is one of the models. This is the effect of it. I'm doing a zenithal prime here, sprayed it black, sprayed white from above. I'm sure those links are all over the Flying Frog website and stuff. So if you want to watch that, you can see exactly how I prime a miniature. But I'm going to take my darker brown color. So I'm going to follow this prime. The places where it's more black, I'm going to put my darker color. The places where it's more white, I'm going to put my lighter color brown. So pretty easy. Just kind of place that in there. Like that. Grab a little bit of my lighter brown. Like that. If you guys have questions anywhere along the way, post them in the chat, and Liz will...
There's actually a Q&A option at the bottom of the screen. If you can just check that, or open that, and then type your questions in that.
Yeah. Click on the Q&A, ask your questions. I will, of course, ignore them, but Liz will not. She will ask me. She'll be like, hey, dude, answer this question. Mm-hmm. So I'm just getting my base coat on here real quick. I like going as fast as possible. So I'm just using that zenithal prime as a guide to kind of tell me where to go with this. Just gonna go halfway up with that shadow. And I'll grab my mid-tone color again and move right down into it. Just like that. Want some shadowy. Is this shirt open? No. Yes. It is open. Glad I didn't paint that. So I'm going to run this right up the sides. Go up on the collar there. While we're letting that dry, let's go ahead and paint his hat too. Let's say his hat's about the same color. So on his hat, my dark spots, I don't have a whole lot of dark spots. It's mostly the leather, or the lighter leather color. But there's a little bit dark on the side. So I think I'm going to paint a little bit of darkness on the side, each side of the hat. Like that. Kind of wipe my brush off a little bit, and then... it's still wet. Kind of wet blend it all in. Just like this. I feel like I want a holder for my model because it's cramping my hand, Liz.
So sad.
Yeah. Cry me a river, right? We're painting cowboys here. We're doing leather. You might be asking yourself, why didn't you just paint it all the lighter leather color and then give it a wash? I like to kind of have some of my shadows already in there to begin with, so I like doing it this way. And it takes just as long to paint it this way as it does to paint it all one color and then come back and start washing. And washes usually take way longer to dry, so I try to hold off on those till more towards the end of my paint job. So just get that. Like that. I've got some shadow areas. I've got some lighter areas. I think I need a little bit more light tones. Let me pull my lights down too, just to make sure you can see everything right. Ever do that? Finger blending? Put the paint off, rub it off with your finger. Works great. So right now, I'm not too worried about whether my blends are really good or anything because we're going to be putting a texture on this model. It is almost better that the blends aren't good. So if you see a couple of things here, let's see if we can, how close we can actually get in without completely going out of focus. Almost right there. Let's go back just a little bit. Alright, so my color's a little bit blotchy. I mean, it looks decent. It's dark, but down in here, it's a little bit blotchy. Up in here, it's not quite perfectly smooth. The hat is definitely blotchy. There's some blotches there. Now, if we didn't want any of that blotchiness, we can always put a second layer on. No problem. But I want that blotchiness to work for me. I want to actually use that in my texture. So this is really nice, because you don't have to be perfect at all with your painting. You can actually use your imperfections as one of your assets. I use them all the time. Liz knows. Liz knows. Alright, so we're letting that dry. This would have been a good time for a blow dryer. But that's okay. Wipe my brush off. See, I used a much larger brush too. I'm using a size 8. This is a beater brush, man. Look at those bristles. Not too hot, but man, it puts paint on like no problem. So I like it. That. I've also got one of these Monument Bombwick Igniter brushes. It's a Klinsky Sable brush. These are really nice. This is the size 0. I really like this for some of my tighter detail work. Very nice. Actually got some paint dried in there. Swear to God, I'm a professional. This is happening. Right in front of you. Alright, so we got that.
Whoa.
I'm gonna throw my model.
Oh my God.
Hey, what do you know? I do actually have a blow dryer, but it's underneath stuff over here. Let me blow dry this real quick. Liz, sing a song.
No,
Break
thanks.
it down.
No thanks.
Where's the DiceFest band? Where's Scott and Mary Beth and the gang? We need at least some like elevator music or something like this.
Is that what elevator music sounds like?
Yeah. Clearly, you've never been in an elevator.
Oh, so
Ta-dam, bam, psh. Okay. So just so that you can see things a little bit better, I'm going to black him out as well. Black out his shirt and stuff. Put a little bit of black on my palette. Usually I paint the entire model all at once. So I've got color on everything before I actually start detailing stuff. So it helps me see the pieces better. But if I can't do that, I do like to sort of black areas out. So I'm just going to black out his shirt here so we can see the other parts of his shirt really well. And I think that's cool. I'm going to do his hair as well. I'm not going to do his face because that will be much harder to paint his face later if I start with black. And I just don't want to do that. Alright, also a couple things you may notice. I'm not thinning my paint. I know everyone says thin your paints, too thin coats, all that stuff. I tinned on my base coats. It's coming right out of the bottle. So it's the same thickness that it came out of the bottle in. If you find it hard to get the paint on the model, feel free to add just a little bit of water to get it moving a little bit better. But otherwise, if you can control it at its full thickness, you're going to get the best coverage that paint's going to give you. So, that being said, we're going to start thinning our paint. And we also need to introduce a new paint. So I'm going to start with the texture. So we already talked about how my colors are a little bit blotchy here. You see the top of that hat? That is definitely blotchy. It's not smooth at all. So that's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I'm going to grab this color, Desert Yellow. And this color is important because it's what's called ochre. It's also blowing up out of the top of my bottle. That's crazy.
What other colors do you have on your palette right now?
What other colors? I have blue and green on my palette. No, I'm just kidding. So the other colors I have on my palette, I had Crimson Hand. So these are I had my main color of leather was leather brown. It's this color, right? Sort of a mid-tony brown. I needed a darker version of this. So I mixed black, shadow black, with the brown, with a little bit of this Crimson Hand. And what that gave me was a reddish, dark reddish brown. That's what I wanted. So, let me shake those up again. I just got to keep shaking them. Shake it like it's hot. Like a Polaroid picture.
Oh, dear.
That was a cliche, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got some of that. Now, what I want to start doing is putting a little bit more texture on this model. So, I'm going to grab some of this brown. Some of the ochre. Now, like I was saying, ochre is important. So this color is good for highlighting your leather. I don't want it to look yellow like this. But what I do want is I want my little teeny tiny highlights to show up. And the yellow in this paint is going to give it that ability. We're using saturation as a visual aid. So that might sound weird, but just go with it. Anytime you want something to show up better, put yellow in it, and I guarantee you it will show up better. But that's the perfect color for this. We're also going to use, I've got this piece of Blister Foam. You can find these all over the place. It's usually used in packaging of blister packs or just products. They come in all different coarsenesses, so find one that works good. Is coarseness a word?
I don't think coarseness is coarse.
It's a word now. So I'm going to add a couple little brushfuls of water into my paint. Let's see about what the thickness of that is. Yeah, of course you can't see on my thumb. Let's see on the side of this model, or this holder right here. So it's see-through, but you can still see it. So it's like semi-opaque right now. That's how much water I put in. I'm going to add just a little bit more of my yellow to bump up the opacity. And I've already lost my sponge. Blends in with my table. So I got my sponge. I'm going to tap it onto that paint on my palette, thinned out paint. I'll dab it off on my puddle pad and we'll go to town. So I'm going to start putting, you want to be real careful. So if you want to do this really fast, you don't thin it at all because it will just build up very quickly. If you want it to be a little bit better look, a little bit smoother and not so abrupt, thin it just a little bit. And so we've thinned ours just a little bit. I'm going to go around, and I'm just being careful not to press too hard. It's kind of like one of those things, like the first couple times you dab it, it comes off really easily, and then after that, it's harder to get off, so you have to push harder with your sponge. But you don't want to push too hard because it will just put a big blob of paint on your model, and that's no good either. Let me mix up some more of this. Of course, I ran out immediately. I'm going to mix up this bundle right there. Put a little bit of water in it.
Do you need some more water in your palette?
No.
Okay.
I'm good with the water. Took up too much space. So, do this. So what this does is it's starting to put a bunch of little texture on there. I'm going to try not rubbing any of it off at all and see what happens there. So depending on the sponge, I've never used this particular sponge before, so it's like putting it on really fine, which is cool, but I'm also not expecting that. So I have to adjust how hard I push and everything just to get that texture on there. At that, I also need to start adding a little bit of white to the mix. So I'm going to add a little bit more of our desert yellow. Put some white on my palette. Like that. Grab a little bit of that for now. Put a little bit of water in there. Be a little bit more yellow. Sometimes it's weird judging how much water to put in because you put your paintbrush in the water and it soaks up a ton of water and then it puts way too much water on in your palette. So you just got to play around with it a little bit. Get my sponge back. Do that. Definitely want to dab it off. Let's see what it looks like. See how that looks? That's a really cool pattern. That actually looks better over black. Who knew? So I'll just keep putting this on. This color is going to show up a little bit better than the first one because it's got more white and it's got more yellow in it. So the contrast between colors is greater. Put that right there, a little bit on the front of the hat. Maybe we want the front of the hat to be really, really worn because he's always grabbing it with his fingers. Quit touching your hat. You know what they say in school? Quit touching your hat.
Is that what they say?
Yeah. I don't know. We didn't wear cowboy hats in my school.
Neither did we.
I'm a SoCal boy.
I'm not.
But you still didn't wear cowboy hats?
No, we did not wear cowboy hats.
No. So put a little bit more on like this. Maybe you concentrate this lighter color on areas up higher. You can keep hitting it. Actually, if you keep hitting the color with the same sponge, it will soak some of that color back up off and make it a little bit more nicer blend. So that actually looks pretty cool. It's not perfect. I mean, it looks kind of speckly, like I did a solar system on there or something. And if, whoa, that's as far as you want to go,
whoa,
then we have to pipe it down. That's as far as you want to go, then that's as far as you'll go. But I think that we can take it a step or two further. So I put a little bit more on the back right there. I got some more over here. And you'll notice with this technique, it's going to hit some of the upper edges more than other areas. So you're not going to hit everywhere. So what I do is I come back in and I start finding all my little areas. Now maybe if you were doing a bunch of I don't know, bad guys, and it was a big squad of 6 or 8 guys, maybe you wouldn't do this as much because this takes a little bit more time. But on your heroes, maybe you just want to add a little bit more pizzazz to them, and you want them to look cooler. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that mixture of, add a little bit of my brown, mostly the desert yellow, and a little bit of white. And that's going to make me a nice sort of light ochre color. I don't want to use that color though because it is thinned out. So I'm going to put some of this color in a new pile, mix it up. So when you're doing these extra details, you want a little bit thicker paint. So I'm just going to thin it just a little bit. Sort of touched my sponge on the side of my wet palette. Just added a little bit of water there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with giving some definition to all the areas. So with leather, especially cracked leather and worn leather, it's not going to be a perfect edge highlight. You're not going to put a line around like both of these cuffs. It's actually easier than that. You're going to put little dots and dashes. Just like this. Bam, bam, bam. And I'm using my better Kolinsky Sable brush here because it's got a nice fine tip on it. And it allows me to kind of get these edges. I'm also using the side of my brush. Like you can actually flatten out your brush like this on your finger. And see if I turn it, see how thin that is? It's like a chisel. You can use the side of that brush and kind of put it on the edge of his shirt there, cuff. Move that all the way around. Like I said, you don't want it to be a perfectly straight line. You want it to be a little irregular because then it looks like it's roughed up leather. I'm going to do the same thing up here on the seam at the top of his shirt. So this is a little bit harder because you can't use that side of your brush as much. You have to use the tip of your brush and actually paint that line in. But if you kind of put it in an irregular way, it again looks like worn out leather. Real rough. Put it around the back side of this. Under the arm like that. See, I did that one. I'm going to do this edge right here. And again, I don't want to hit it perfectly a straight line all the way across, so I'm skipping spots. It's like a typewriter. Tap, 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 miss, miss, hit, miss. Come back, hit a couple spots a little bit more. That looks pretty cool. So you see where we're starting to get a little definition in his shirt there. Do it up here. I love this style of painting because it's not perfect, and it's not if you make it perfect, it looks weird. So this is a perfect opportunity to not be perfect. And I am very not perfect, so I'm going to do this other side. Hit these edges. Got to get this seam right here. Now the other thing about leathers, you've got a little bit of his collar back here that's showing through, so I'm going to hit that. Then we also want to do the bottom of his jacket because leather will wear everywhere. So you don't normally put highlights at the bottom of clothing, but in this case you want to because that's an area of like real wear, especially in the back by his buttocks. Put that in like that. We'll bring this up the front. That outside edge again. Sometimes you got to hit the edges a couple times just for it to show up. But this color is showing up very well because of that yellow. If we just put white into our brown, it's not going to show up nearly as well. So that's the importance of having that little bit of yellow in there. I know it's not like a vibrant yellow, but it is yellow, and it does its job. So I'm going to do the top of his hat here. Again, kind of dotting it around. back. This front side. Boom, boom, boom. For those of you who have gotten the remastered models, what do you guys think of them? They're pretty cool, aren't they? Like I'm really digging them. All the new plastics are just awesome. Okay, so we got that. He's got a little strap around the top of his hat. So I'm just gonna, I think I'm gonna paint that black. So I can see that detail when I'm painting the rest of the hat. There we go.
Marianne said the new sculpts are so much better and in a lot of cases more dynamic poses.
Yeah, they are really nice. I mean, even when they are seemingly the exact same pose, like there's a couple of them that are like, okay, that's pretty darn close to the original. They're still like, there's just little things, you know, they're just so much better. All right, so we've got that. My next step is to kind of knock down some of my shadows again. So I'm going to make a sort of a color for a liner. So I'm going to use our red, the brown and the black mix, but maybe more black this time. And I'm kind of thinning it out about 50-50. And this is called lining your model. So I'm going to pick out some of the details here. And you want to keep your brush really thin and flattened out. And I'm going to just kind of outline stuff. This. And in here. Now you can use a standard wash for this, but it's not going to give the same look. This is very much so bringing everything into focus, where a wash is going to kind of knock down all your colors and make them darker. Now we might employ a wash on this a little bit later, but for now I want to not do that. I'm going to just get all these details in there. So I'm going to go under his collar up here. And this seam back here. All the way across. So I'm just drawing in this shadow color. This is basically where the two parts of the fabric come together and there can no longer be any light and it actually turns to like almost black. If you make these two lines too thick, you'll end up looking sort of comic book type model. But if you keep them fairly thin, it just looks like really good detail. If I mess up, you can always grab some of one of my other colors and kind of just bring that back in here. Like you see my line is a little bit too big right there. I'll bring my mid-tone back in. Push that line right back real tight there.
Sean said that he is excited about the alt-gender characters.
They are sick, just to say the least.
Love them.
And I love that they're in plastic. They are just super awesome. We don't have any of those yet, do we? That's a bummer. I have to get some. Because the Bandita,
yes.
Legit. And the Gunslinger, oh my gosh, she's just beautiful. I think the interesting thing was that I had to paint everything exactly the same as the first time. And that was like 5 years ago. That was wild. That was not the easiest thing to do, but it was a lot of fun. Loved painting the studio models for that. All right. So I'm going to go a little bit more. Sometimes I do the dark lining and then I come back and I'm like, you know what? I need a little bit more. So a couple areas like that. But you see how he's starting to, the shape of the coat, the details are all starting to come out now. And now we're just going to make him super, super worn. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of this color. I need to thin it again. So we're back to sort of our 50-50 thin consistency. And what I'm looking for is those little speckles. And I want to add to them. So like right here, you see that speckle it just looks like a speckle. I don't want it to look like a speckle. I want it to look like worn leather. So I can come in and just kind of maybe stick a couple of these colors together, like kind of bridge the gap between a few of my speckles, kind of making a motion like this. See how that paint's going on really irregularly? I'm kind of just moving and grooving all the way down like that. And see, I've got some areas that are thicker pigment, some areas that are thinner. And then if I do it again, right over the top of that, since it's a little bit see-through, all that information starts adding up together, and it starts making a very, very detailed sort of worn leather look. So the other thing is, I want the areas that would wear the most, like maybe up in the shoulders, the elbows, maybe I want to hit those a few more times. This crink in the elbow right here would definitely get maybe some more wrinklage. Areas where I missed completely, I couldn't get the sponge in there. I'm just adding that color in right now. This is the first time it's being added in. I'm gonna go, there's a wrinkle right there, so I'm gonna kind of add some speckly right there. The tops of his shoulders definitely are gonna have some wear on them. And don't worry, if you go too far, you can always do the same technique with your mid-tone color and put some of that mid-tone back into the whole thing. Well, that seems really thick.
We're adding more speckles.
Yeah, we're adding more speckles. Yes. I mean, the funny thing is you could do this and then re-hit it with a sponge, and maybe you'd have a really cool look. Part of this whole process is having fun and like learning what works, what doesn't. I mean, obviously you don't want to wreck your miniatures, but I don't think we're putting enough paint on these miniatures to actually wreck them. If you have to repaint them, I don't even clean the paint off. I just reprime them, start over. But let's hope that we don't go that far. Let's just. Okay, that's looking pretty kind of cool. Now, if you're doing a display figure, you're going to do this for hours and hours and hours, but we don't want to do that. We want to get a little bit quicker. So I'm adding a little bit more white, and I'm just hitting a couple spots. Maybe do like a couple scratches. So to do a scratch, I put my brush on my hand like this and flatten it out. Of course, I did that really slow, so I can do it on my palette. You don't want the paint to dry, but I can kind of get some little scratches in here.
Oh, your hat's in the way. Yeah. Got real excited.
Got real excited over there. With scratches, you can do the same thing where they're kind of dot, 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 all the way down. See the back of his back here. It needs some of this, but it's darker brown. So I don't want to do the super yellowy brown. So I'm going to bring in some of my mid-tone color again. Wipe some off on my finger. And I will be able to kind of bring in a little bit of texture on this back part. A lot of times I hit where these wrinkles in the fabric are. I'll hit those because not only does it put texture on it, but it also gives me a little bit of a highlight because we're using a little bit brighter color than that shadow color, right? And I'll come in with my lighter color. And one thing I also do is over here at the edges of this, I'm going to make this a little bit lighter than it was in the center. And that also gives me that feeling of things are wearing out on the edges. Just like this. Little bitty dots. Nothing too technical. That's already starting to look pretty cool, I think.
It looks great.
Maybe you guys think it looks horrible, but whatever. No. It's a lot of this is just trial and error, just seeing what happens. Or my head's actually getting in the way. Okay,
Joanne
gotcha.
said, it's so horrible I'm crying.
All right. A little bit more right there. Put some of this up in here. Now, if you don't have a Klinsky sable brush, a really nice fine pointed brush, this is going to be a lot harder. I'm not going to lie. Like if I was trying to do this with this brush, well, I could do it, but it would be a lot more difficult. I'd be using see that little tip that's kind of flicked off to the side? I'd be painting with that. So definitely do yourself a favor and get a couple, 1 or 2 brushes. You don't need a whole lot of them. They're just for days like today. When you're putting this super fine detail in. I'm going to put a little scratch in the back of the hat. And it is the weather has changed so much. It's like so dry out now. It's crazy.
Yeah, even though it just rained yesterday.
Yeah, I actually find it gets drier when it rains.
Oh, that's weird.
That is weird. That looks pretty cool. I like it. All right, moving on.
Okay.
Questions?
Yes.
Answers.
Marianne says, hold on. Sorry. I had a box in the way. So when I see your amazing work in person, it's smooth and all the blends edges look great. Also, when they are photographed, they don't look rough, but smooth and finished. How do you get that highlighted, weathered look to look so smooth?
Well, first off, Marianne, okay. I'm a banana. No, I'm just kidding.
My gosh.
How do I get that to look super smooth? So some of it is a little bit of airbrush magic. So I put glazes in with my airbrush after I've put in all these textures. So I kind of do that. If you don't have an airbrush or you're not comfortable in doing a glaze with your airbrush, you can do glazes by hand. And so what a glaze does is it kind of filters light through so you don't see it as well. So let me take one of my colors here. Like I'm going to take this red. And I'm going to put a whole bunch of water in it. Like I'm going to thin it down like maybe 99%, 98%, 97%.
Can you decide?
36% of 94% is how much I thinned it down. No, I thinned it down quite a bit. Like if I put it on my hand, like that doesn't look like Gothic Crimson at all. It is definitely, or it's not Gothic Crimson, it's just Crimson Hand. It's just a dirty water basically. So I can start coming in and start glazing this in. See that? You see it a little bit? It's kind of pooling. The trick is not to let it pool. So I'm gonna get most of the paint off the brush. I'm just gonna start putting it in. So what this will do is it's gonna start tinting my model a little bit red right there, but it also puts a filter over my other colors. And even though it seems very see-through, it's starting to block information or light information through to the other layers. And what ends up happening is your paint job just starts smoothing out more and more and more. Now, your blends already have to be fairly smooth, or you need to have a really good texture for this to work properly, because if it's a bad blend, it will actually just start looking worse. So I don't recommend doing like really light glazes if your blending is not super tight. But what this will do is it just starts creating those filters. So I'm going to grab some of this darker brown and do a glaze with that. And you can do several different colors if you want. I typically don't glaze with my lightest colors because it will it'll end up looking kind of dusty and chalky. We don't want that. Chalkiness happens when you thin your paint too much. And sure enough, glazing is thinned out paint quite a bit. And if you have a lighter color, it will get very chalky. So I recommend when you start getting to lighter and lighter colors, you don't thin them down, you keep them as thick as possible, because it will keep it from getting chalky like that. So that's, and this glazing process can take 20 or 30 coats. Slowly but surely, it starts getting rid of, it starts making all this painted stuff look like it's set back into the model, and it looks like it's just a leather jacket. Nothing else. But you can see, even with just, even if you're not trying to get it perfect, you can get this effect fairly quickly. Oops. Look at that. Eraser time. You can get this effect fairly quickly, without spending that much time on it. It does take a little bit longer. Anytime you're putting extra details on a model, it's just going to take time. Let me get the top of this jacket a little bit more. So we're half hour in? I don't know. You just need to talk to me.
There's a question.
Okay, question.
Yeah. Do you ever use glazing medium, or is water just as good all the time?
I just use water. Here's the reason. Glaze medium, which I have some because I've been using it in my airbrushing lately. It tastes really awful, and I tend to lick my brush sometimes, so that's kind of yucky. 2, it leaves a shiny film on your model, which you may or may not want. If you want that, it's okay. But I just find I learned to use water. I thin my paints just with water, and it's always consistent. It always thins exactly the same, so I kind of like that. But don't let that stop you from trying out. If glaze medium works for you, use it. All right, I'll put a little bit more in. Sometimes I'm dotting, sometimes I'm doing sort of weird strokes. All right. Now we might want to emphasize certain areas to look a little bit brighter or lighter than others. So maybe I come in, add a little bit more white to my ochre color, and hit maybe some of these leading edges of things, just to give a little bit more visual interest to certain areas. Like the front of his shoulder, I think, is interesting. Kind of brings a little focus of light up there. I'm going to do this piece right here. Maybe the very top of his jacket. Like this. And do the front of his hat. Now it's just cool to have like little scratches down the sides of the hat. These guys are in the thick of it, and so it's like things are going to happen. They're fighting down the mines. They're not going to be pretty. Faux show. Like that. Cool. Now, what we can do, I have a glaze here, or I have a wash here somewhere. Strong tone ink. Put a little bit of that on my palette. I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see it. What do you know? My palette cam is like a very limited space. I don't know how I did that this time. But, all right, so I'm going to use my wash. And maybe we'll put some of this in. Now this is also a way to kind of tone down that look of the blending, because this will also filter your model, or filter the colors. So I'm going to bring it right up over that side. Right up here. I'm going to take a second clean brush that I just sort of licked damp, and wipe away the outside, the excess stuff. That kind of leaves me with the dark shadow in those lines. Do we have a question?
Not a question, but we do have a comment.
We have an answer.
Paul said, I know Aaron likes to draw attention via the bright highlights, but the bright scares me. I don't know about 30 glazes, but I'd want to tone it down.
Well, the funny thing is none of this is bright on this model. It's all very subdued. So I get that. The hard part when you subdue everything is you tend to just lose definition, and so your models become uninteresting. And I mean, I guess if that was your goal, it would work. But that being said, you can still have desaturated areas and kind of toned down areas. In fact, this wash kind of tones things down. So if you use that and kind of just leave spots that are a little bit more saturated like that, you still get that nice dark leathery look, but you also have that pop of that color. So it doesn't have to be like super, super bright. It's just I'm using that brightness to help me quite a bit so you actually see what I've done. Because a lot of times if you subdue all these colors, if I just used white in my paint and made it lighter and lighter, you're not going to see the color, or you're not going to see those details as good. So it's like you do all this work. I remember doing all kinds of work and then it was like I did nothing. And that's depressing too. So it's okay to use, you don't have to use the brightest colors, but I do use saturation of color as my friend to get certain areas to show up. Like all these little lines up here show up really well because of that yellowish color in there. It's still a brown jacket, it shows up better like that. And it is sort of scary using those colors. I remember when I first started painting, everything ended up almost black because I was just like, I would solve every problem by making it darker. And I always longed to, have lighter looking models and, a little bit brighter. And so I just, over time, I got better at doing that. All right. So I think it's nice, sort of weathering up there texture, but I think on his arm down here at the bottom, I'm starting to lose it a little bit. So I'm going to just bring some of that back in just a little bit. Right on the top of the arm. That makes more sense, I think. Mm-hmm. Very cool. I like how I tell myself very cool. I don't know why I do that. I think it's my nervous tit. This is so cool.
It's cute.
It's the 3-minute jacket. Go.
Oh, you were off.
Oh, off camera?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I'm getting crazy up in here. It's Sunday evening.
Turn the model upside down.
Missing football, like all that stuff. Just kidding. I'm not missing anything. Hanging with my friends, doing what I love. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Ta-da. So now I could continue working this. I could continue adding little micro details. Like I could come down in here and be like, okay, I see there's like a little bitty thing right here. There's lots of stuff I could do further on this model. However, that would take the next 25 hours and we don't have that. So I think this gives you a good idea of how to kind of add some leather texture, some worn out leather. The key is these edges need to be really much lighter than anything else because that's what's going to give you that really worn out look, like the leather is frayed almost. And don't paint those edges in as a solid block. You're gonna paint little dots and dashes. That's what we call it at the shop, dots and dashes, baby. Just like that. That looks pretty cool. It'll show up on your gaming table really well. That's the other thing about the brighter colors. How many of us have like good studio lighting in our houses or at the game store? Not too many. And shoot, At our kitchen table, you can barely see the food. So, having a little bit brighter colors, learning to paint with a little bit more vibrancy will really help in just the visual niceness of your models. When you're playing, everything pops. Everything looks really cool. Question. Hit it.
All right. Chris says, I know there weren't a lot of greasers in the Old West, but what color would you use to texture a black leather jacket?
So you could use blue, but I oftentimes use some of these same browns. So I would paint the jacket black, maybe use that dark reddish brown as my first highlight. So I'd go the opposite. So black down here, dark reddish brown up here. And then I would, where I wanted it all rubbed off and crackly, usually those pieces of leather have been dyed, so they're all this brown color on the inside. So it's going to start quickly going. All your scratches and weathered edges are going to go more to that mid-tone brown or leather brown, and then right up into desert yellow. Now this might be my brightest highlight because it's black, and this will show up really good against black. I used a little bit of white because the brown is a little bit lighter, and so it's a little bit easier to do or to see if you add a little bit of white to it. So, all right, question, answer. No questions?
That was the question.
So I told you couldn't do glazes of light colors up in the highlights, but when a highlight is really bright like this, you actually can. So I'm taking my lightest highlight. I thinned it out about to about 10% paint. It's really, really thin, and I'm just kind of dabbing it on right over my highlight area. So I'm not going outside of the highlight area, I'm staying within it. So that way, if it gets chalky or anything, I'm not going to be able to tell. Like, there's no way to tell on there. And that's a good way of smoothing out up in your highlights and making them look just as smooth as your lowlights, your shadows and stuff. All right. That up there like that. Rock and roll.
1 hour.
All right. This is where my OCD kicks in, and we dark line for the next hour. So.
Oh my god.
No. So the more detail you want in your models, you always need that dark line needs to be legit. So, I always keep coming in and re-hitting my dark lines. They're never exactly black. Like in this case, they're black and red. So a really dark red-black. Just like that. Get a little bit more, focuses the miniature a little bit better. All right. Okay, so next up on the docket is something. Cracked aged leather on holsters and belts. So this can be super, super easy. You know what? Let's do a black belt. Might as well, right?
Good idea.
Man, you lucked out on that one. Okay, so belts, this is how I treat belts. Whenever it gets close to a holster or a pouch or anything like that, the belt will get darker. Whenever it gets close to an article of clothing or a belt buckle or something like that, it gets darker. So it always gets darker. I don't know why, it just looks cool that way. So I'm going to paint a little bit of this black right down here. I'm using my more detailed brush because we're painting a small belt. I'm going to paint some black up here. And then I'm going to grab our blackish brown that we mixed before, that was our shadow. It is now our mid-tone. And I'm going to paint it right along that line. So you can't, on the film, you can't really see a whole lot of difference. It's slightly darker on the ends, slightly less dark in the middle. I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm going to paint the top of the holster. Can't talk. Top of the holster is the dark brown. Bottom of the holster, I just grab black on the end of my brush. And I paint the bottom black. I'm also going to paint the sides of the holster black as well. Now, obviously, if you were painting lighter browns, you would, where the black was would be your shadow color, where the dark brown was would be your midtone color. So it just switches up like that. I'll do this part of the belt as well. So black right there. I'm going to put black right before the belt buckle. I'm going to paint the belt buckle too, just so I don't see it anymore. And I'm going to put my mid-tone brown right in the center. And then maybe I'll do black on the top part of the belt as well. Alright, so got that. I'm going to paint my gun black. Just so you know, I mean, most Shadows of Brimstone players paint their models with true metallics. I'm the same way, but if you were, when you're painting with true metallics, they're all made to go over black. So whenever you're doing true metallics, I would recommend painting black down first. And so in this case, I've got this top of this gun. I'm going to paint it black. And I'm good to go for when I want to put the metallics on it. That's the front of the gun right there. All right. So we got this. Got that on there. I'm going to blow dry it real quick because it's all wet. All right. And this will be the quick and dirty way to paint a sort of a old leather belt. I missed a part. Liz, you're supposed to be like checking me on these. Checks and balances.
Is that what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that. Okay, so we've got this. I'm going to start with our leather brown right on the edge of the belt. So leather, most people just highlight the top. You're supposed to highlight the top and the bottom because it's leather and both sides rub off. So I'm going to flatten out my brush a little bit and just paint the top edge of this belt. That light brown color. Maybe I'll put a second coat on there. Be real light with your paintbrush. You want to be able to see this though. So I just put a line on the top. I'm going to put a line on the bottom. And that starts our belt. I'm going to do the same thing on our belt buckle. So basically you're just going to outline this belt buckle. So I grab my paint, I flatten my brush out on my hand so you see like a chisel. You can flatten your brush out anywhere, your forehead, your ear, whichever works for you. I prefer my hand. It's like, have you ever gone to the grocery store and you have paint on your forehead? Like, that's not a good look.
Have you?
No. I don't do that kind of thing.
No, you just have them all over
I just have them
hands.
everywhere else.
Yeah.
Coming out of my mouth.
All over your clothes.
Okay, so you see I did a little outline around the whole thing, the leather, the pistol there, the holster, sorry. I'm going to do this little flap right here. Now, this is one interesting thing. If you're going fast, I just keep it all the same color. But if you wanted to do something else, like that could be a metal plate, it could be a different color leather, all kinds of things. The sky's the limit, so be creative when you're doing these. Especially on your heroes. Heroes are made to be put extra time into. So the other thing with leather things, I always do that edge of scuffed up leather on the inside edge right here next to the gun or next to the body. A lot of people don't do this, but it would wear on that inside edge too, and that's another thing that tells me this is leather. Hey man, this is leather. What are you laughing at?
I don't know. the things you say.
So I always tell people for competitions, paint your model till it walks away. And that's what I was thinking right there when I said it. You know, you're painting this model and he's like starting to look more and more real. And then he looks up at you and he goes, "Hey, man, I'm a banana."
Is that what he says?
I don't know. Crazy. All right. So we'll get this on both sides. You don't see a ton of difference, but it's there. And it's important to have this first color because if you just do the next color by itself, it's a little bit too drastic. It's like too harsh of a change. And then you're going to have problems.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we got that all the way around. I'm going to add a little bit of our yellow color. What's that called again? Desert yellow. Mix that in with our leather. And again, so now we're using the power of that yellow color to help show up on this belt. Because you see that highlight right there doesn't show up really, really well. We needed it there to start the highlight, but we need this yellow color to finish it, to really bring it home for us. I'm going to start on all the corners of things, stuff where I think it would rub off the most or get the most aged. Now, if you really didn't want to, if you wanted to have a completely different leather than this, if you wanted it really different, you could actually start highlighting with a bluish black, and that would work as well. And then you just add whites into that. But I don't think that looks like realistic leather, so I do it this way. So see, I'm hitting the front edge, the leading edge, the far edge over here. I'm doing a little bit right there, right at the bottom corner. Whoa, grab the wrong color. It's okay. It's all right.
Your head is in the way.
I gotta, after this class, I need to change up my classes were set up. We did an airbrushing series this month, and my everything's set up for me to be airbrushing, not necessarily paintbrushing. So I will set this up a little bit better in our break between now and the freehand class, but just keep yelling at me otherwise.
I will.
You have a huge head.
Your forehead is in the way.
Oh my goodness. It's the forehead of the ages. That's actually what helped me get the job at Flying Frog.
Your forehead?
Yeah, Scott saw me online somewhere and he's like, "Dang, that dude's forehead
is receding."
is huge. Yeah, let's get that guy over here at the Frog. He's got something to offer. All right, see how that's starting to show up better now, though? You see all the details on that belt. We got to do the underside of the belt as well. Can't forget that. This is where maybe I start. You can also do stuff like this. So I'm putting those dots in. Every once in a while, maybe I pull a line across. This. They don't all have to be in the same direction. It can be a little bit staggered because these are just scratches or maybe little cuts and cracks in the belt. I love that kind of stuff. This makes me happy inside. Like this. Let's do a couple scratches across this holster. So again, I'm trying to keep my brush flat like a chisel. See how flat that is? I turn it. It's like a shovel, chisel, shovel, chisel, chisel, shovel, chisel.
I don't know what's happening.
I don't either. It's getting close to Halloween, and I've had too much candy already.
That is true. The suckers are so good.
I have not had any suckers.
Oh. Well.
All right.
That's your
So a
loss.
couple little scratches in there. I'm going to put a couple more vertical type scratches in this part of the belt right here. The cool thing is if you go overboard and you kind of made too big of a scratch, okay, that's really close to where the belt meets the holster. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my black from before that we did as a base coat and just kind of, it's a little bit thinned out. It's almost like a wash. Just kind of push that back in, make that area darker. I'm going to darken this area right here next to this one. Maybe I'm going to grab, here's another one that you can try at home. So I'm grabbing a little bit of my black paint, and then I'm grabbing some of my wash. And I'm mixing a mixture of black paint and wash. So it's like a hybrid. It's half wash, half opaque. And that sometimes helps me with my dark lining because it helps the paint flow much better. So I get the best of both worlds. I get opacity, kind of. I get a wash, kind of. Like that. I'm going to put this up here next to the shirt. Remember, it always gets darker there, and it always gets darker right here. Now with this area, I'm trying to be careful because I actually had some cool scratches right there, so I don't want to obliterate them completely. So maybe I go in between a little bit. I don't know. Just like that. I want to make the bottom of his holster a little bit darker than the top. So adding a little bit more black there. Do my black line again. Sweet. Okay, so now we've got, so we did first highlight. We added our ochre to our leather. Did our second highlight, which was the one that's showing up better. And then our third highlight will only be in the areas that are most worn or the areas I want you to see the best, which would be highlight areas. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of that desert yellow. Why can I never remember that name?
I don't know.
Well, it's because I want to think it's ochre. It's
Yeah.
just an ochre color. So
Yeah.
it's just ochre, man.
Joanne wants to know if you and I have a YouTube or such page for fans.
Wow,
Did your brain just
yeah.
fart?
I don't know, not necessarily for fans, but so we do have a Patreon page, which is we have a Patreon called Miniature Monthly, and that is a subscription service. But there's 3 artists on it, and we teach people how to paint. And basically every month we have 3 videos, and from 3 different painters, and they all paint differently. And we basically just start showing you how to paint. We do stuff like this for Flying Frog, which we put on our Miniature Monthly YouTube page. So this stuff will come up eventually on that, probably within a week or so, or maybe a couple days. I don't know, whatever. And then we also I do online classes. If you really want to get into miniature painting and start learning more of the techniques and, have PDFs and all that good stuff. We just got done with the Airbrush 101 class, which was a lot of fun. That was all month. And we're gearing up for a non-metallic metal class in a couple months. So there's that. And then there's also our Facebook pages. Mm-hmm. And Instagram and all that other good stuff. In the Miniature Monthly Discord, actually, there is a gallery where I post a lot of pictures of my work.
Okay. I'm putting all of the links in the chat on the Zoom right now.
That was probably way more long-winded than she ever expected. She was like, oh
yes.
my gosh, this guy needs to shut up.
No. You're fine.
My first thought was like, we don't have any fans. We only have friends.
I mean, that's pretty accurate.
That is pretty accurate. Okay, so see the last set was just the desert yellow. And it's only on the top sides of things, but not all the way across. So in the areas of major wear. So right on the top of this part of the belt, The back corner, oops, I got water all over my brush. Maybe the bottom part of this. Actually, let me put a little bit more at the bottom of this holster because I think this would get really dinged up. And the key here is try to put these ones on kind of as little dots and dashes so that it looks really messed up. Really leathery and crackly. Couple more little spots here. There. This looks really strange. This is just bugging me. That stuff isn't painted. Let's just paint the whole model.
Oh my gosh.
Alright, we're not going to do that. Don't worry. Don't worry. You know, that scares everybody. But I just want to get some blue on his pants. I'll just mix that blue. I don't have any more room on my palette, so I'm just mixing it in with the brown. Just gives us a nice blue brown mix. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of this white. That might be too much. Give it that denim look. See that? Bring that lighter color back in all the way down. This guy has a really nice butt. I don't know. I know you're probably all thinking that.
I was.
Yeah. He's got a good looking butt. In the industry, we call that a nice looking butt.
What? Is that what you call it?
Yeah. Like that. Grab some more of this lighter color. Oops. Maybe that's not so light.
I think I have all of the links ready.
Alright. This is going to post it for 5 seconds, and if you don't get in on it, it's gone. No.
There's just a lot of links.
I do try to post whenever I can in the Shadows of Brimstone Facebook page, but a lot of times I can't post what I'm working on, and
You're almost off screen.
I'm almost off screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. We still got that blue going on.
Ooh, yeah.
Who's Alright. I'm completely distracted. I'm supposed to be doing tattered leather, or tattered clothing, which I suppose we could do on this guy's blue pants. But we're not going to. I just wanted to put that on so I could see it better against my leather work there. See how the leather actually looks better once I've got the pants on. So a lot of times your models will look really funny not painted. So you really want to start getting as much color on them as possible just to start, so you can start making better color decisions and stuff. We'll get that on there. Notice I'm kind of painting quickly with this really crappy old brush, and that's giving me a little bit of texture too. So this is one good way on blue jeans to get a little bit of texture without actually painting a bunch of lines. You just got those little textures in there like that. All right, so that is that. We got 17 minutes left. Just kidding. We have more than that. We got plenty of time. Let's do this. All right. So this is the part of the show where we paint tattered clothing.
Marianne said she's very disappointed in you.
And what did I do?
Because we have been doing this for an hour and 20 minutes, and you have not said, take it to the bridge.
Take it to the bridge. That's an end of the show thing, Marianne. Oh my goodness. I must be in a zone. I gotta tell you, I'm really enjoying painting these new figures. They are super, super cool. Like just to put that out there. Let's do this. You know what? Just for the fun of it, we've got a little extra time. Let's continue painting this denim here.
Yeah.
So I've mixed in a little bit more white. Now I'm grabbing my better brush. So I put in that first texture with the old brush. I'm grabbing my better brush, and I'm just gonna paint it in horizontal lines, real lightly. So the lighter your touch, the better. If you push too hard, your brush flattens out and it creates thicker lines. So we're just gonna put this in. And what I've found, the trick here is, you only see the texture in the upper areas. So don't worry about down in shadows and stuff. Otherwise, you're going to be painting for 5 years putting this texture in. You can do it very quick, just like this. This is a highlight area, so we'll put some more in here. Actually, I think I need a little bit more white. This is DiceFest Bonus Jam 2020. Ticket to the bridge. You know, now that you said that, Marianne, I missed saying it.
I think it's because you've switched to saying I am a banana.
I'm a banana. Listen, Marianne, for the last time, I'm a banana.
She said, okay, I can rest easy now.
Yeah, we're good. Take that to the bridge.
And Joanne said, I can't drink anymore during this class.
Okay, here's the truth of the matter. It's been a long weekend, and I am
losing
a little bit crazy. Which is going to make this class all the better. Let's do this. All right. You know, sometimes like when not that life is stressful or anything, but it's like, it's been a long weekend. You're tired, you know, and it's like, sometimes it's just good to embrace that little bit of crazy, you know? So you don't end up yelling at your loved ones. You're just a little bit crazy, that's all. Just like a little bit. All right. So we just get those little lines in there. Quick and dirty. Doesn't that have a song, Quick and Dirty?
I think that's
I don't think so.
Riding Dirty, but that's kind of not the same.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? So if you want to go really fast, and you might up your contrast a little bit, so bring your colors up a little bit faster, and you can always put a really quick wash on this and knock it back down. So we got that like that. I like pudding.
Pudding is delicious.
All right, I need an orangey brown. Flying Frog doesn't make one, so we're gonna make one. I got orange, molten orange. The most molten orange there ever was. You see, when you need a color, you can always mix it. Flying Frog, actually, when Scott kind of put together the colors for their set, that's what he was thinking. So I got colors where we can make other colors out of them. So I'm going to put a little bit of dirt on this guy's leg. That orangey brown looks great. I love it. What do you think, Liz?
It looks blue.
Good. I'm going to put a little bit of this down at the bottom of his leg. I put it on. I'm using a second brush. I'm wiping off the top area of that brown. Put it over here. Wipe it off. The less perfect this is, the better. And I am good at that. All right. I'm going to put a little bit right here. Boom. 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 I found when you're doing this type of weathering, the faster you go, the better it is, because you're not thinking. You don't want to be thinking about, ooh, is that blend smooth? Nothing. Just kind of put that on there. See, now he's got a little bit dirty pants. Cool. I like it. I'll bet you $100 he sits on the ground a lot. So No, Andy, this is not poop. This is dirt. Come on now. All right. A little bit of dirt on his butt. Put your hands on your thighs a little bit. So a little bit of dirt right there. Wipe most of it off so you get mostly just the texture. But there you have sort of a cool textured pant. I'm gonna grab some of this wash.
Whoa.
That was a lot, huh?
That was a lot.
And you wipe it off. I don't play around. These are Brimstone fans. They gotta see it all.
That's true. Joanne wants to know how
I sleep at night?
No,
the question is, Joanne, how does Liz sleep at night?
Yeah, that's the better question. No, how do you manage such jumps in color?
What do you mean? Like when I was wet blending and stuff, or that's like the sort of the key with wet blending. I mean, so we should do a wet blending class, huh?
Yes. And Chris,
someday.
his wipe off brush is damp. Sorry.
Yeah, my wipe off brush. So basically what I do is I clean off my wipe off brush, so there's no paint in it. Sort of crimp it in my paintbrush so it's dry, and then I just lick it. That's a disgusting looking brush, but look at it, it's way better looking now. And basically that's the dampness of it. If you don't want to lick your brush, just wipe your brush off. It's all wet. Sort of roll it in your towel so that it's not soaking wet. You just need it damp, and then that's how I wipe stuff off. So I put it on, wipe it back off. Put it on, wipe it back off. Put it on, wipe it back.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry. Okay. So he's got a little thing right here. I'm going to darken up this band. Because that's like a little leather band that holds his holster. I've not been off screen this many times in a long time. I think I'm just so excited about this class. I'm like,
Chris said, how about just wipe it on your wet palette sponge?
you could do that too. But my wet palette sponge is very wet. It's always filled to the very top. So I do that because it keeps my paints wet longer. So that one I would probably grab more water that way, but it's okay. But if your wet palette is less damp than mine, then that would work as well. Any way you look at it, you're just trying to wipe off some of that.
Marianne, we cannot do a video of Aaron tasting different brands of paint.
Yeah, I just tasted the wash, and it does not taste good.
Yeah, those washes taste terrible. I made that mistake a while back as well.
Mm-hmm. It's like that little kid.
Yeah.
You're like, I was watching Aaron Lovejoy paint Sunday night, and then he started dry heaving, and good times.
Aaron said, put on, wipe off. That's what Tom's Sipsy said.
Which, speaking of dry heaving, Marianne, should we talk about the time we met?
Oh, poor Marianne.
She loves that story. It's
she
awesome.
said, oh no.
Okay, so did a little bit dusty texture on the pants, dirtied them up, painted them pretty quick. Man, this guy's coming together. We've got another hero almost. Man.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on to this because we are clocking through time, and
we're at 30 minutes.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Fast.
Go faster.
Aaron's.
Turn it on. I'm Aaron. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to darken the areas by where his pants are tattered and torn, just to start with. So we need that's not as light and bright as the rest of the model, and he's got a tear up here. Darken that. Obviously, those are bones. They will get painted bone color, but for now, let's just darken them in so that we can see what we're doing a little bit better. So sometimes it pays to do some things like this because it just helps you see better and you can, I don't know, it's easier to paint the model. All right, so we got that. Holy cow, my wet palette is very full.
Slide it down.
Let's see, I don't know which way it goes on that. It goes this way.
Yeah.
Whoa.
There we go.
Oh my goodness. All right.
Bless your heart.
We've got new real estate down here.
Not much, but
Rail estate. All right, so I got my blue, which was the portal blue for making portals, and apparently blue jeans. And I need a little bit of black in with that, so I'm going to grab some of my black that we used before to make a little bit darker blue. And the key here is I'm not trying to make dark blue. I'm trying to make light blue, but I'm making a grayish blue. So I need a little bit of that black to turn my blue kind of gray. You following me, Liz?
Yeah, I'm trying to get this lighting on your palette because it's super dark.
Super dark. You know what's funny?
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Can you adjust it?
I can watch this movie magic. Here it comes. Configure video. Okay. Brightness. Maybe brightness? Whoa.
Ta-da!
Is that better? Can you see it better?
Yeah.
Right. I can do contrast too. Oh, now you can see the
go.
colors better.
Now that's much better.
Hit apply.
That's accurate.
The movie gods have spoken. All right. Hey, I can see it better too now. Except I can't see my screen anymore. All right. There we go. Okay. So we got that. Got this dude. And so basically what we're trying to do, you've got all these torn areas of these pants, right? All this area right here. And you know what happens when blue jeans tear, all the strands turn like almost white. So we're going to do a couple different colors of white strands. But we also want to do sort of a more tattered. These are blue jeans just like the other ones, but they're a looser weave. Let's put it that way. So more like a burlap bag almost or something. So I want to put these little bitty lines everywhere. If any paint will come off from my brush. So I just kind of go like this. The trick with these lines, you don't have to make them like, they don't have to go all the way around the miniature in one straight thing. Just make tiny lines and then come back in and make more lines. And you don't want them to be right on top of each other. You want one to end and another one to start, sort of like so they're not all symmetrical. I'm going to add just a touch of water to the tip of my brush so this flows a little bit better. Like this. I want all these little lines to kind of culminate when I get to the torn parts of my fabric. So I want lots of little lines on the tear of that fabric, right on the edge, because that will look like the frayed edges of that denim. Now, if you're doing this for gaming, and you know, obviously you don't want to take too much time. Like when I was doing the studio models, I took, you know, probably several hours to do the pants and the shirt to get it looking just right. But you want to do it a little bit quicker, and for the tabletop, that's fine. So make sure when you put this color on, if you paint a stripe or a line and nothing happens, you need to make it lighter. You need to put more white into it or something. So otherwise, you're just painting a bunch of lines that don't show up. That's no fun. Just kind of going in between each line, making more lines. These lines right here. Lots of little lines right up on the edge. And then I'm going to do other ones where I come downwards, so vertical. And this always portrays like a coarser fabric. And so like if you're doing it on like your saloon girl, it would look weird because you're like, okay, she's not wearing super coarse fabric. But on this guy, it can look a lot better. Especially I did it primarily on a shirt on the studio version. And I think it looked pretty cool. Again, I'm not trying to get them all parallel to each other. In fact, the more sort of haphazard they are, the better. You don't want them to start, swaying or anything. They all need to look vertical, but they don't have to be exactly perpendicular with each other. Go like this. A little bit more here. If you want a little bit better look, a little bit better what's it called? Blending of or better texture. You can always vary the color of the texture that you're putting on. So just kind of go back between shades of gray or darker gray, and you'll get a little bit better. It will confuse your eyes more, and it looks like a better texture. But for gaming, I think this is absolutely acceptable, and it's quick. So now I'm going to put in a little bit more white. And we're going to make it look like some of the edge of this is frayed even more. So just pulling those out a little bit. And again, these ones you don't want to be exactly spaced the same distance each time. You could do 1 or 2 and then skip a couple spots. Just like that. I think that looks pretty cool. Let's hit this part up on his leg. Like this. Sometimes you just put a little dot. That's it. Dot matrix. What are you laughing at?
You used to use those printers.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't around back then.
Ha ha ha. Super funny. That was like 10 years ago.
Ask me about the dinosaurs.
Oh, bless.
That was my time. I think I was 22 or 23 when I got my first computer. I was old.
I was about to say something really smart.
Yeah. You shut your dirty little mouth.
Was this the size of that desk?
Yeah. No, but it was a 1 gigabyte computer. I think that's what it was. And I remember the owner of the store was like, "You will never use that much memory."
Yeah.
Holy cow! I turned my phone on at Sprint and it was like 17 gigabytes already. Holy cow! All right, so we got that. It's actually looking pretty cool. Do these ones. So if you want to be really clever, you can have a couple of these little frayed hairs. You can turn them in different directions and make it look like they're actually, hairs that are kind of spinning around or doing whatever. Looks pretty cool. Gonna grab. Now we will use this paint. This is the best color right here. Fang Bone. Fang
I
Bone.
want to be on camera when you're showing it.
What's that?
So you might want to be on camera when
That's
you're
right.
showing it.
Can use a little of this Fang Bone here. Fang Bone is my middle name. Alright, so we're going to use the leather color as kind of our base coat. I may have mixed a little of that Fang Bone in with the leather color, but, pay no never mind. I swear, I've been in Georgia for a little less than a year now, and you almost can't understand me. My accent is so thick.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. I've really taken to
You
the
do
south.
say some real country.
Twangity dangity dang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking to my dad.
Yep. Me and your dad, we're Southern boys. The first time I met Liz's dad, I was so scared he would say something to me because I couldn't understand him. I mean, I could understand him most of the time, but when he got excited, like talking to your mom, I was like, oh God, don't look up at me and say something and laugh because I'm going to be like, I don't know.
What are you saying?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't speak English. I mean, his accent isn't that strong, you know? It's just like when he gets excited. It's like, blah, 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 blah. That's what it sounds like. That's my best impression of like a country Southern accent. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
It's not what it's...
No.
You're looking at me like that's not what it sounds like. You've been in it for so long.
For so long, since I was born.
Yeah. You've been indoctrinated for so long. You just don't hear it anymore. But good times. All right, this is turning into a bone tutorial. But keeping the areas around there real dark does help because our bone is really light, but we've also got these light colors over here. So I kind of did that on purpose, keeping the background area dark so that you could actually see it when I was done. So I just kind of put those bones in, build up the highlights a couple times. I'm using my nice, good brush. That looks like realistic bone matter. Question.
No.
Joe Salazar, go.
What?
I don't know a Joe. I don't know a Joe Salazar, but that's what it is. You're questioning a lot of things, aren't you, over there?
Yeah. Just kidding.
Right. I want to make it look like there's a bone inside there too, so we'll just put a little bit of that bony maroni color in there. I hit a little bit up here.
Look at those pants.
Those pants are legit. All right, so remember our orangish brown color? Hey, let's go get it. Oh, I don't know where it went.
Yeah.
So let's make a new version up here. So let's blow this up for the world to see because we got 30 minutes left. We are
No, we
set.
don't.
No, we don't. Okay.
We have
So
15.
So we've got this brown right here. I'm going to add a little bit of the orange to it because we want to make an orangish brown. This orange will make the brown more interesting looking. And I think we could actually put a little bit of black into it as well. Maybe a little bit of blue. Not a lot. A little bit more black than that. All right. So now we have an orangish brown. That's the color we want. That's the color of dirt. It's the color of rust. It's the color of just everything that is holy. Grab some of that on my brush. I guess I should switch back to our other camera. And we will start putting in some of our dirt. So I usually put it bigger than I need, and then I wipe away. Now you could wipe the whole thing away. And it does leave a little bit of paint left over. I mean, if you really wipe, it will take all of it away. But sometimes I put it on and I wipe it almost all away. And that's all that's left is that little essence of dirt. That's what we call it in the industry, the essence of dirt.
The dirt tips.
Dirt tips. If I want more of it showing, I only wiped off the top edge. And I left the bottom like pretty much opaque. Like that. This is the quickest, easiest way to dirty up anything. Just works great. His pants are all ripped up, so I'm gonna add maybe more dirt on here than I normally would. I'm sure that at some point he died, so he's probably laying around in the dirt. So that being said, let's put a little bit over here. I'm gonna wipe it away and just leave it in the crack there. It's like dirt in between items, articles of clothing. This also helps cover up some of your little lines were a little bit wonky, so that can help cover that up a little bit too. Put some down here. Boom. Just like that.
Wow.
This guy's painting up quick too. We might have we'll have our whole set done.
Did you dirty up his butt?
No, because I didn't paint his butt.
Oh, well.
He doesn't.
That'll do
That would
it.
have taken a lot longer.
That's true. That looks good.
This is movie magic. It's like, when you watch a baking show. We start and we're done.
Yeah.
No. There. Perfect. And we'll go a little bit down in here. Now, once you get that on, if you feel like, oh, you know what, I knocked down some of my little highlights a little bit more than I thought or than I wanted. So we can grab some more of that really light blue and put in a couple of these, put them right back in.
Oh.
Just like that. How are we doing time-wise?
It is 5:46.
All right. So we got like 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Do we got any questions? Any answers?
Any questions? Not currently.
Cool. That was easy. Easy crowd. Let's see here. I'll do a little bit. Thin out my strong tone wash a little bit. Can add some of this into my shadows. I do use washes, but I just don't use them like traditionally the way people use them. I don't just douse my miniature with a wash and move on. It's more controlled. I put it in just areas like this where I want a little bit deeper shadow, and then I feather out the sides. And so that helps. The nice thing about that is it dries much quicker. Like if you just put a ton of wash on your models, it takes a while for it to. That was a Marley hair.
That was Marley hair.
I think. Or a Sasquatch, one of the two. I'm just going to do that.
Joanne wants to know when she can get an autograph.
When do you think this coronavirus thing will be over?
Yeah. And Paul Martin said, do we have time for the night terror hair technique?
Good question. I don't know if I have a night terror done. Hold on a second. Let me go look in the other room. Because I didn't have one made up. Maybe I have one of the other ones. Here's one. Hold on a second. Grab another one.
Oh.
So, these are the night terrors from my own army. So this is the ones we play with. Did them relatively quickly. So, the bad thing is they're done.
Well,
the red one,
done.
yeah, looks a little bit less
so
done,
maybe.
maybe.
Choose a part of it and do that.
Yeah. So basically, all right. So on the first part of it, I actually airbrushed. So I airbrushed red, so a dark red from below, a medium red from above, and then maybe a little bit brighter red right there. So it was just that's how I did it. If you were painting it, you just paint it all red, maybe put a wash on there to get some shadows in, and then you go from there. So actually I have a whole bunch of parts rubbed off. Now I gotta find red paint though. I got some. Saloon red. Here we go. This may not be the same red I used on these guys though. That's the only small issue here. Do that. I used red. I used white. So a lot of people say don't use white because things turn pink. But guess what? A lot of red is pink. So just gotta roll with it. You just gotta use less pink or less white than normal. And so let's see if I can. There's some areas in the back here. Actually, man, I need to touch these up.
Yeah.
I got all kinds of stuff on them. So I'm gonna start. I need a little bit more black. So I'm gonna put some more black on my palette. So usually I go in a 3-step process. So I do. I start with my color a little bit darker than I want it, and then I highlight, and maybe highlight. So. Ooh, that red paint doesn't taste good either.
Ew. That was a face.
Wow. That black took over that red really quick. Oops. Got more red over here. Okay, so I have mixed up a kind of a darker red. I've got my Saloon Girl red, and then I've got white. And go in here. We'll go into some of these darker areas. Now, I left this really dark because I was like, I don't want you to see that. So if you see all this detail up here, you just never look down into there. And that's a good way on your gaming miniatures to make things just go away by making them much darker. But that being said, I'm going to put a little bit more detail in here then. So I'm going to kind of, now the hairs on this are kind of there. The idea of the hair is there, and so that gives you like some ways that your brushstrokes will sort of weave in and out. And what I'll do is I just take my first color. Maybe I'll pick out some areas where it actually is textured up. So like those would be a couple of little spots. Over here though, I'm just going to start making brushstrokes. Let's see if we can see that very well. And these brush strokes I need to be a little bit thicker. Like you see how thick that is? If I push down harder when I start the brush stroke, it makes the brush split out, so it gets wider. And then as I pull it, I pull away from the model and it makes it thinner, and it'll make like a pointy tip on there. This may not work if you have a really bad brush, so you probably want to get some better brushes. Basically, I'll put this in. I'm not worried about making every single individual hair. I'm worried about kind of making the idea that there's hair in there. So if these ones go over each other, that's okay. It's a lot of this is going to be covered up with subsequent paint. So I got that on there. I'm going to switch right into my really bright red, the Saloon Girl or Saloon Red. In this one, I want to put kind of similar thing right at the start of those brush strokes. It doesn't have to be directly over a dark brush stroke, but it can help. We're trying to just create a texture, like a confusion in your eyes. Get this, that. These hairs seem like they curve back down, so maybe I'll do a couple of them curved that way. I'm going to start adding some white into there. Whoa. Grabbed a ton of white paint there. Okay, so I grabbed a kind of a pink color.
While you're putting them hairs in, where did you get those bases? What bases are those?
These ones?
Mm-hmm.
I made them. And I have a whole tutorial on how to make them on the Patreon. What do you know?
Ding, ding, ding.
That's Miniature Monthly. Yeah, so these bases I made for Flying Frog put on, like when I did models from Derelict Ship. And I made a few extras, and I had them, I had my buddy cast them up, and I made them for my own army. Then I moved away from San Diego, and I never saw him again. So that's the end of that story. I don't even know where those casts are. I should have asked him for them when I left. Not that I know how to cast anything, but. So then I just start coming in and see how I'm pulling different hairs in there. Now that's a little bit stark. So I'm going to mix up sort of even more of a middle of the road color. And I can kind of come back in here, cover some of them up, make some of them more, some of them less. If I feel like I have too much highlight color in there, I can go back. Painting my computer now. Here, and I can bring in some shadows, some shadow wisps of hair there, like that, and that starts giving you a little bit more texture. If my like these tones look really light right here, these tones would actually be better out here, so I can always come in, take my red, make a glaze. So just add a whole bunch of water to my red. And I paint it right over these areas. And it kind of knocks down that white highlight. Sometimes you got to over highlight things and then knock it back down with your mid-tone color. I can just kind of do that. That kind of brought it back. That looks a little bit bright right there, so maybe I'll come in here. Wonder if I could bring up some of these colors. So the real key here with red is just making sure that your little bits of pink and white are very, very small. Here.
Hat.
It's like when I really need to see, I really need to get close.
I know.
Get away from there. It's all right. I chose this lifestyle. I think the real key is you get to those last little wisps, you want to go in different directions. You want to make it look like the wind is blowing, like it's a little wind-swept hair. Like this, like that. Just little bitty details. Key is that you can see them. So I'm jumping quite a bit in my color. I'm going almost to white for those final little wisps, and just kind of getting in just that little idea that there's hair there. Kind of like that. Maybe do a couple of here. Again, if you do it overboard and you're like, man, I went too bright, you can always use that glaze and knock it back down. That. See if I can. Sometimes it's just finding the color that actually works. So your fur isn't going to look right at first. You know, you're putting all these little streaks in here. I think it's important to have them kind of going in different directions, but kind of all in the same direction. Now that sounds weird, but and then you just keep putting those streaks in. You keep doing it over and over again, and all of a sudden it starts looking like fur. Go right here. Maybe a little bit like that. I feel like there's too much right there and it just sort of stops right there. So I'm going to bring in a little bit more of this lighter color right in here. Bump that up. I feel like his little fingernails, these cuticles and stuff, could be a little bit brighter. That. I actually painted these guys really quick the first time, so maybe it's good that I'm revisiting them.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, the reason why I did 2 different colors, and I actually should have a more whitish gray one for Tradera, or not Tradera, but the Targo Plateau. This is for the base set. This is for Derelict Ship, and then I need the other one for the Targo Plateau. And then I'll have enemies for each different thing, and see their bases are different. There's the mine bases. These ones are Derelict Ship bases. Rock and roll. Rock and roll taco. All right, let me do a little bit on this side. We're down to 2 minutes. 2 minute warning. 1 minute. 0 minute warning.
We're 1 minute over.
We're 1 minute.
What are we?
1 minute over.
Murder.
There we go. All right, so hopefully that helps you a little bit on the fur. I know that wasn't a full tutorial, and it would have been better if I had started from scratch, but you get the idea. There's just a lot of little lines and different shades of color, and just build them up. If you get too bright, knock them down. Knock them down without a frown. All right, finish that up. Well, y'all know what time it is.
Pew, pew, pew.
It's dinner time. But we'll be back in 1 hour, and we're going to be doing something else that's super exciting. I don't know what it is. We're going to be doing freehand. That's what we're going to be doing. So thank you all for stopping by and watching this. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next installment of Behind the Brush Freehand with me.
The password for the next Zoom is freehand.
The password for the next Zoom is freehand. That's it. All right. See y'all later.
Bye,
Thanks
y'all.
a lot.